I did a little bit of retail therapy. That's how I'm going to put it. I did a little retail therapy. As I mentioned way at the beginning of this ramble, my mother-in-law had slipped me a couple of dollars to, I guess, augment the camera fund. And instead, what I decided to do was to put the money towards something I could do on stream that would augment my spinning wheel upstairs. We are going to open up a box. Now, the thing is, this I was looking at it and I was doing some comparison shopping, and I thought to myself, you know what, I could spend the entire amount of the birthday money on one of these sorts of things that is made of wood, etc., etc. This is 3D printed. Where's the other side of it? This is a very interestingly constructed box. That does not seem to be a theme. Neither does that. How does this thing open? Probably this way. As you can see, it is an Electric Eel Wheel 6.0, which is less expensive than, say, an Ashford e-spinner. Other wheels are other 3D printed wheels are coming out onto the market or being tested, and they're being sold for about the same amount as an Ashford e-spinner. I took a look into it and it was like, wait a second, you're telling me that you're making a product that's similar to the Electric Eel Wheel 6.0, which sells for generally about 200 and something US, so about 300 Canadian, a little less. I think everything that I got here was about 300 Canadian before shipping and taxes. But you want $1,000 for it. Like, I think the Daedalus, is it the Daedalus wheel? I think they're wanting something like $1,000, and there's another one, Plyometric or something. But I looked into similar offerings that were still, I guess, in beta, and it was pretty much the same sort of thing, but for more money and for less stuff. And I saw some really good information on the Electric Eel. There were some people who were comparing, say, the Electric Eel Wheel Nano or Nano versus the Ashford. So I figured, you know what, I might get a little extra noise off of the Electric Eel, but it's a lot less expensive. It'll pay for itself a lot sooner than the Ashford would or one of these other 3D printed ones. Spinning is such a neat craft, and one day I very much look forward to trying once I have space. Well, that's the thing with the Electric Eel, you need a whole lot less space. Like, seriously, the box is smaller than my keyboard, really. Like, not as, for those of you who are aware, this is a very kind of vintage Apple keyboard. That's about the size of it. That's an Apple keyboard circa early 2000s, I think. It's came with one of, I think, one of the first first metal iMacs. So if you're looking for a space saver, something like this is probably in your wheelhouse. so to speak. They also have a smaller one called the Nano, which is about $100 US. I considered it, but then I went, no, because I plan to spend a lot. And one of the things that I kind of like about it is that if I do my spinning on, pardon me, on the shaft upstairs, I can do my plying on here, which might be cool. It has a slightly different method for the flyer, but we'll get into that later. The different parts of it. Oh, okay. This is less a box and more origami. Okay, here we go. Electric Eel Wheel 6.0. You can tell that they did not know that I was going to be unboxing this screen because, you know, I am not that big a name. Sounds like I found a pretty good deal. I did. I was actually just in the nick of time because apparently they do these things in batches. It's the yarn and fiber industry has a tendency to do things in drops. So what will happen is you will have a fiber company that will basically independent dyer who will do something like put out one drop every month, and so for the over the course of the month they'll dye up the yarn and fiber that they think is going, like they might choose 2 or 3 different fibers to work with and come up with 2 or 3 come up with a new colorway and refer back to about 2 or 3 other popular colorways that have sold well in the past, and then they will do a limited drop of merchandise on their website. And it's not my favorite way to do things because it does build up a kind of false scarcity because they can make those colorways at any time and in any amount. But sometimes you can only get your particular colorway of fiber at certain times and only on certain base fibers. And that is something that the reason why I keep turning to the side when I say this is I'm looking at the fiber that I'm probably going to spin up while I'm talking, because I chose that in advance thinking I was going to do that on the shaft upstairs, but I think I'm going to do it today. So woohoo, I get a nice little care package with, this would be the orifice reducer. Yes, we use words like orifice. A couple of ball bearings, a handy couple of cards for wraps per inch. And that up there. So that lets you know what kind of twist you're looking at, what the angles of your twist are like, as well as what size. There's your angles. I do believe that Z twist is used for mostly for plying and or mostly for spinning, and S twist is used for plying most often. And share card. So share this card about an affordable line of espinner with a friend. So if you're interested in one of the 3D printed spinners, and I guess we'll find out how well it works in just a little bit. There is the website, dreamingrobots.com. So dreamingrobots.com does something similar in that they have a limited amount of product that comes in and it goes in and out of stock. So they were doing they were mentioning that they were going to be getting more stock soon. Different bands. This would be for, I'll explain why later, but there are different bands. This would be a band for making sure that the flyer spins, and the string is for scotching the bobbin. It sounds like another language entirely, and you'll get used to it. Is an orifice hook, because you can pull it through the orifice. And we've got ball bearings, because this thing runs on ball bearings, as well as a lovely little, that's for the scotch tension. Okay. I take it this is the user manual. I'm going to take that out because I'll be referring to that. Probably going to need one of these. Ball bearings, they're not just for skateboards. And there's this thing. So put the rest of that aside just in case. I have cords. We have cords. Awesome. Oh, 3D printed bobbins. The Electric Eel Wheel comes with 6 bobbins. Considering that my Shacked Reeves spinning wheel came with 3 bobbins and a Lazy Kate, and I'm not sure whether the Lazy Kate came with the actual spinning wheel originally, or whether it's just the yarn store that we purchased it from threw it in with the purchase. But when I purchased my Shacked Reeves from a local yarn store, I got the spinning wheel all set up, plus 3 bobbins, plus a Lazy Kate, which is where you can put your bobbins when they're not actually in use. A Lazy Kate is a very useful thing to have. So yay, 3D printed bobbins. Purple and white and blue, very pretty. And another box of bobbin. So that would be the other 3, I think, or another 2. Another 3. That looks like a foot pedal. No, is that the Lazy Kate? That's the Lazy Kate. That was a sort of separate purchase. It does not come with the Electric Eel Wheel itself. It is a separate item. It's very affordable. I think it was something like 25 bucks. So probably about $30 Canadian. Altogether, the Kate plus the wheel was about $300 Canadian. So under $300 US. And the way that they've put this Kate together is pretty ingenious, and it apparently does tension on the bobbins, which can be very useful when you're trying to ply your yarn. Put this out of the breech. Okay. The flyer. This is what your bobbin goes onto. This is what the orifice hook will fit into. I'm not mistaken. And these, on my Shacked Reeves, these are just hooks, period. They do not move along the flyer. They are actually drilled into the length of the bobbin. On here, of course, this thing is going to spin. These can, now apparently these can be moved around a little bit. I think people have been known to move the angle of these a little bit, but we'll see how it works the way it is today. Let's go back to just big craft. No, only craft. Here we go. Don't need to see me. More power stuff. Now, the 6.0 comes with a foot pedal, if I'm not mistaken. So that is the Electric Eel Wheel. That's how big it is. Alrighty, so one base, one flyer, one bottom cover. That would be a bottom cover, I do believe. Power supply. Tea warmer, please keep my tea warm. That's the Lazy Kate. I will need to set that up in a bit. What are you? You, the foot pedal? You could be the pedal. Foot switch. Yep, that's the foot switch. So that would be the other side of the power cable. It appears to be long. It's got a blue light. We're good. Haven't blown anything up yet, which is good. Thread that through the tripod. Sorry if the camera's moving. So I guess we'll find out. I think this goes this way. And it has settings on the side, so this is how fast it goes. 3 is like smack down the middle. Which ply you're doing. So we'll be starting with a Z twist, because that will be our spinning ply. Spinning a single ply. There we go. Okay, assemble the bobbins. Now, having multiple bobbins is really useful, because the more bobbins you have, the funkier crap you can pull. And I say that in the nicest way possible. Basically, if you decide that you want to make something a 3-ply yarn, you can make it a 3-ply yarn. If you decide that you want to make it a single-ply yarn, you can make it a single-ply yarn. Or a double-ply yarn. And the thing is that you should have at least one more bobbin than the amount of plies that you want to make, depending on how thin you spin. So if I'm making a 3-ply yarn, I'm going to be plying a single onto 3 bobbins. When I do the actual plying, whoo, fresh plastic smell. When I do the actual plying, I'm going to need a 4th bobbin to transfer from those 3 bobbins onto. Now, the nice thing about this is they just screw together. And if for any reason you need to take it apart, you can, because some people do prefer to do things without one of the ends on them for whatever reason. But yes, so if you are spinning a 3-ply yarn, you are going to be using up 3 bobbins per ply, and that, or per single, and then you are going to be plying onto a 4th bobbin. So the fact that they give you 6 is really great, because if you are like me and you're a procrastinator, you can wind up with 3 bobbins all full of plies and a 4th bobbin full of ply, and still need to actually ply all those singles together. Luckily, even though my shacked reeves only came with 3 bobbins, there was a spinning craft store just outside of town a few years ago. I think they have since gone away, but I think they've since closed their doors. But they had, okay, so I'm not going to need to use any of the Scotch tension stuff. They had some shacked reeve bobbins in stock, or rather, I think they ordered some in for me. And so I wound up with an extra 2 bobbins. And I had made myself a ad hoc extra lazy Kate so I'd be able to store them. That's not going to be a problem anymore. We'll see whether or not this lazy Kate will actually accept my other bobbins, because if they do, that will be fantastic. I will enjoy being able to use this Kate if it's a tensioned Kate. The reason why that's important is because my Kate that came with my shacked reeves free spins, which means that if you tug on the single, it lets out a certain amount of the strand that you're working on, but it'll keep going. And it's very easy to break the strand that you're working with. So if it's tensioned, then you pull it out and it just pulls out what you need and stops. So you're not actually, it's not continuing to spin. It's not spinning under its own force. Yes, I believe that these are for doing tension. Put them here. Now these look like little spikes, and that's on purpose. This is what will go inside here. You notice that it's just the right size. And we'll see if it's just the right size for... Let's see if it's just the right size for my my stuff. But sometimes you just want to be able to put a ball of yarn on something to hold it. And that's what that is. That becomes a yarn spike. Which sounds kind of funny, but that's what it is. Boom. There's one. And the nifty thing about this is if you find that you work better having your little balls of single plies separate, you can then, you know, put them in different places. Or you notice they're kind of jigsaw puzzle shaped. Or you can keep them all together. That's a little bit. So you'll notice there's a little groove right in there. So what you can do take this little bit of elastic and put it into the groove. And that means it doesn't move unless you want it to. You would think that I owned one of these things, but no, I don't. I don't know what the bobbin stopper is for, if it's to go up top. Make sure that it doesn't fly off. I've just watched a few of these things on YouTube, so that's how I know this stuff. Well, maybe that's what that's for. It doesn't fly off the top. It's just a little rubber O-ring. Hey, are you gonna go through the hole? There we go. Get on there. Go. Then wrap it around the flyer in a little groove. Okay. I think that's how that goes. Put a metal bearing on the back of the flyer and slot the whole flyer assembly. Okay. Boom. There we go. That's good. Slide the tension string into the bobbin pulley. When you start spinning, you can adjust the tension dial. Okay. This is what they often call Scotch tension. And it's part of the physics of spinning that the speed of uptake, how fast your single ply of yarn will make its way onto the bobbin, how fast of it, and how well is determined by the tension on this tiny little spring down here, which right now has absolutely no tension on it. But as I turn the knob, you will notice that it gives just a tiny little bit of tension to it. Sometimes you don't need a heck of a lot of tension on that. And if you are not going to be using a spinning wheel in a while, or if you're not going to be using the spinning wheel once you're finished using it, it's good to release the tension on that spring, and that way you don't wear out the spring or the cotton string that's attached to it. You want to use the foot switch. Insert its plug into the back of the base in the port marked switch. Now, if I recall correctly, the only thing that this does is it just turns the electric eel on and off. It's just a simple on-off switch. And it's got a very simple construction. Turn the speed dial to make sure it starts at 0. If that's 0, yes. Plug the power supply into the wall. Switch. Oh, an amplifier jack. Okay, little light turned on. Tell me that it's plugged in. Now, if I was spinning art yarns or things that are chunky, this is a somewhat bulky flyer. It's going to allow me to spin. I could probably do an entire bump of yarn onto one of these bobbins. It's a pretty nice big bobbin. I mean, it's not huge, but it's not tiny. But if I wanted to spin art yarns with like little bubbles of stuff, little bubbles of fiber, or bits of fluff spun into it, I could take off the orifice reducer and it just goes through. So, ooh. Hey, orifice hook, through here. I take it this size is for going through the orifice without the reducer. And I seem to recall hearing that this will... Ah, there we go. A couple of little magnets. Little magnets. Awesome. That means that we can start spinning. And we have fiber. This is, I'm trying to get it so that it's not necessarily being, there we go. Can I get a non-glare here? Okay, there we go. This is colorway Korth by Into the World from the July 2013 Luxe Club. It is 80% merino, 20% silk. And I'm going to be very honest and say that I am not thrilled with the colors. This is what we're working with. Now, the reason why I have some issues with it is because it's very monocolor. If I was to turn this into black and white or grayscale, it would be fairly consistent. We wouldn't have a whole lot of variation in the value of the color. In other words, not a lot of darks and lights, at least that I can see. I mean, that could change as we open this up and tease it out a little bit, but I really couldn't tell you. I am going to sit down and start spinning them Into the World Silk Merino, which, you know, whether or not I like the colorway, the feel on the hands is just chef's kiss. Okay, now, for those of you who don't know much about spinning, if there's anybody here who is not a spinner, what you do when you get your hands on your actual fiber is you can then pull it apart. You see we've got these nice floofy bits on the end. Thing is, I should be deciding what kind of fiber or what kind of yarn I want to make, and kind of thinking about this. Probably should have done this before I pulled off this end. I was thinking I would make this a 2 or a 3-ply, possibly a 3-ply. 3-ply with what's called fractal spinning. So the trick will be to, I'm just going to only craft. So what I am going to be doing is I'm going to be dividing this into 3, and then I will be dividing, say that's about a third, and then that's about a third. Okay. This might actually be the easiest way to explain it. So then you wind up with 3 long strands, right? Well, each of these, fluff all over the place. Oh goodness, up my nose. Each of these 3 strands is going to be spun slightly differently. This one will be just spun the way it is, as one long strand. Strand number 2, I am going to be splitting it in half. And so once I have finished spinning all of first part of strand number 2, I will then spin the second half of strand number 2. Now, I'm basically just using this small bit as an analogy for the rest of this huge honkin' braid. This guy gets split in 2, And then each of those gets split into two. And once again, they are going to be spun one after the other. Now, as you can see, once you get down to this size, you have a much smaller amount of fluff to work with. But keeping track of everything can be a bit of a pain in the butt. So what this will do is it's going to distribute the color along the finished yarn so that all of these colors that are in the yarn will hopefully barber pole in a fairly nice way. So I guess I'm going to have to pull all of this apart and then pull it even further apart. So that's going to take me a couple of moments here. There we go. That's just there to help me get started. And you feed those up into your hooks. My left-handed orifice hook. There. Boom. There we go. Ah, there we go. This is a fairly short draw. What I'm doing is I'm drafting it while I'm spinning it. So I'm pulling out from the top and just allowing a few of the fibers just to roll in. And then what I do is I just move my hand back and allow the twist to come into the fiber. So I'm controlling how much twist is getting in there. Oh, that's quite nice. I know you guys can't really see it and see the pigtail itself, but it's quite nice. I think that's what we'll work with.